just going to summarize my presentation with a few conclusions. As Muslims living in the West, we have several challenges to face. We need to preserve our faith, become a useful part of the society, learn from the good things the West has to offer, and become true representatives of Islam. All these goals can be achieved only if we are God conscious, polite, knowledgeable about Islam, tolerant, and open to correction. We also need to communicate well with others and keep good company to be able to achieve all these goals. There are many issues we need to address. Children need to be educated properly, no matter whether it is through a full-time school, weekend schools, or education at home. Children need to be properly informed about their faith and the challenges to it. Parents can't escape the responsibility they owe to their children in this matter. Friendship with non-Muslims isn't disallowed. However, it has to be within the limits of decency. The idea should be to mutually learn and benefit. Greeting them with salam and wishing them on religious occasions is a good idea. While informing others about our faith, we need to listen to others too. Conversions on either side are a likely consequence. No one should be pushed to convert nor condemned for taking a conscience-based decision. Our success of this world and the next one lies in properly understanding the role of our faith, the role our faith has outlined in the society, and discharging our obligations to the best of our abilities. I was asked to be a little more elaborate in my summary and conclusions. I failed to do what I was asked to, so please accept my apologies, and I hope that in the question and answer session I'll make up for it. You can't do things you are not prepared to do. So I'm now available for Q&A session.
Please, any questions for Dr. Saab?
When you said that people who live in this country need to obey the law of this country, we know that the majority of Muslims in this country are obedient and they do obey the law. There's only a very minority of Muslims who, unfortunately, for whatever reason, they disobey the law. However, we see more and more laws being made and they touch our faith greatly. And some Muslims, unfortunately, they do tend to accept that. I'll give a couple of examples. For example, in France, recently they voted that women Muslims should not wear veil. And unfortunately, some Muslims, they accepted that under the name of tolerance. Because that this is the law of this country, we need to accept it. And in an authentic hadith, the Prophet Muhammad said, لا طاعة لمخلوق بمعصية الخالق. There is no obedience to a creature in disobedience of the Creator. But this is very, very important point, which I would like you to elaborate on, please. A bit more.
I'm sure it's a difficult thing to sort out. But I think the more a matter is difficult, the more we should considerate to the people who have a different point of view. When we have a matter wherein there could be more than one opinions possible, we should put across our point of view convincingly, forcefully, but should also be prepared to see what the other point of view has to say and to offer, and try to work out solutions. You have quoted a hadith which most certainly is absolutely correct. We are here in this world first and foremost to be obedient to the Almighty. And the obedience to the Almighty is actually demonstrated in the form of the obedience to His Messenger, may God's mercy be on him, who brought the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, the two core sources of religion. However, as I said in the initial part of my presentation, it is also a part of the expectations of the Almighty mentioned in the Quran, that you will abide by the promises that you've made. That also is a Quranic law. When you are confronted with a situation where two different opposing considerations are at odds with each other, to begin with, let's acknowledge that there could be 2 points of view. A person might say that, look here, I know that there are certain requirements of dress for ladies to follow, for men to follow. But on the other hand, I also know that the Almighty wants me to follow the law of the land because they are in authority. Some people would go for one point of view and others would go for the other. I mentioned that that's where you need to be tolerant. Don't disrespect or ridicule the other point of view. That also has its own merits. I'm not saying that that point of view is correct. But if you want to follow the point of view wherein you say that my wife, my daughter, my sister must wear the dress which the authorities in France are not allowing them to do, I salute your commitment, but I would ask you honestly, earnestly as a fellow believer, leave France, leave that country. Don't live there anymore because you cannot follow its law. As simple as that. You are living in a society wherein you have been given the liberty to express your views. You have a choice to accept something which is lesser, which would make you to compromise on certain practical expectations. But you would try to be as convincing, as forceful in presenting your arguments to the authorities while remaining completely peaceful and democratic. If you find that they are not agreeing, just go to another good country. Go to some Arab country, go to Pakistan, go to any other country where you can follow the rules of the Sharia properly. But you cannot live in a place where on the one hand you are saying that we are going to go against the law and we are also going to continue to stay here. So, you know, it's a tough thing to do, but you've got to make your own choices. When Muslims, some of the Muslims have chosen not to do it, they have a reason to do it. You have a reason to disagree. But then of course, when we have a disagreement, we just talk about our own respective points of view as to, you know, with the hope that the other is going to accept your arguments. And that's the only hope. This life, brother, is a trial. It's a challenge. There are no easy answers.
If I might just rephrase the question slightly differently. If you are confronted with a situation where you have to follow either the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is clearly stated in Quran in many verses, or follow the man-made law by you give, even if it's against the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which one do you follow?
If you ask me, I'll follow the law of the Almighty and leave that country.
Okay.
But what some Muslim brothers and sisters are insisting is that they will live in France, but they will go against the law of France. That's not on. They
Yeah.
choose one or the other.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Please.
I want to ask a question at how can we overcome living in the West when the West is actually at war in Muslim lands? And how can we move back to Muslim countries where the Muslim countries are actually worse than the West itself? Worse in the sense that how can we move our children or the third generation living in this country now?
The reason why I chose this subject was precisely this, that we don't have any clear.
Could you just repeat the question before answering so that
But then I need to remember the question. What she's asked is that how can we live in the West when we know that the Western powers are at war with the Muslim countries? And how can we get back to the Muslim countries when we know that the situation here, there is even worse? So here is a problem, wherein we've got to go for the lesser evil. However, let me again reassert what I have said. When we are assessing what others are doing, let's try to be as fair as we can. The other day I was attending a certain discussion wherein there were some brothers who were talking about the hypocrisy of the West, wherein they are trying to influence the democratic rule of certain Muslim countries to impose their own ideology. That's true. But let's also acknowledge the fact that at times the same Western powers have actually come to the rescue of Muslims, for example in Kosovo. So there are cases wherein what they're doing has been helpful. There are many cases wherein what they're doing is not helpful. We've got two choices to make. Both, as you rightly pointed out, are not very pleasing. They're not very acceptable to us. We live in these countries and somehow tolerate the fact that what they are doing in some cases in their foreign policy is against the interests of the Muslim Ummah. Or we go back to one of the countries belonging to the Ummah and face a society which sadly is very corrupt. Probably we don't want to become a part of it. I think probably not a bad idea would be that you continue to be loyal to your religion and to your conscience. Stay in this country. At least this society allows you to speak out what you think is correct. Try to influence the majority. I can assure you why there are people who are bent upon making speeches and raising points against Muslims. There are many others who are sympathetic towards Muslims. I'll just quote you one couple whom I only met day before yesterday. And my goodness, they are amazing. They are a couple who are Christians. They lost their daughter in 7/7 London disaster. And thereafter, their lives are devoted for the cause of supporting the Muslims. I mean, it's wonderful. They help Muslims. They keep telling the authorities that the policy of the Western powers against Muslim world is unfair. You're talking about a couple who lost their daughter because of something that the Muslims did. What I'm saying is that this society is not completely devoid of morality. To be honest, many of them are pretty good. What we need to do is, on the one hand, we are not going to compromise on our principles nor on our conscience. We will live as good citizens, good Muslims. We will show a good example of ourselves to others. We conduct ourselves in a manner that people are attracted towards us. Don't forget, changes don't take place overnight. It takes time. You don't know. Maybe if it's not going to happen in your lifetime, your next generation might actually be instrumental in enabling the society to be positively attracted towards Islam. That's what we hope for. There aren't any easy answers. So when we are in a situation where there are two possibilities and both are not quite ideal, well, we choose the lesser evil. My ordinary understanding is that the lesser evil is that you stay here, give it a fight, be a good citizen, be a good Muslim, and never compromise on your principles, and keep talking about the unfair attitude of the Western powers towards Muslims. I think that's the way out.
Good morning, Dr. I just got a question regarding making friends with not making friends with Christians and Jews. I quite agree with your point of view regarding the verse in the Quran regarding it does not mean in that sense. My question was, I was wondering whether at the time of Makkah and Medina, when Hazur was there and that Jewish community is there, surely the children, when they're going, the children make friends with children, or Yes, I was wondering whether, because I haven't read that part of history, because obviously the Jews and Christians, what it says in the Quran is, when the wars were happening, a lot of Jews were malicious against Muslims, about Banu Qurayza and what happened in Khyber and this kind of thing. And along with that, Muslims obviously lived in Medina, state of Medina, peacefully as well. Obviously, a lot of them were peaceful, a lot of them were troublemaking. I was wondering whether there were practical examples of a Muslim being a friend with a Jew or a Christian in a general. I was wondering whether the question.
Brother has asked this question that while talking about the possibility of friendship between Muslims and non-Muslims, you mentioned that this is very much possible. Is it that you can quote some examples from history wherein in Medina Muslims were actually friendly in their attitude, approach towards non-Muslims? And is it not that
Particularly Jews and Christians.
the understanding that has emerged that we cannot be friends with them was because at times Muslims were at war with non-Muslims, and it were in those occasions when this tension was witnessed and experienced. To be honest, brother, we go for history to elaborate the Quran.
Yes.
But the Quran is not a vague book. It is absolutely clear. What it mentions is very clear to the reader, provided the reader is prepared to read the Quran completely and entirely, believes that it is a consistent book and is not a book which contradicts itself. How could a book say that you don't make the entire community of Jews and Christians friends, while on the other hand is allowing Muslim men at least to get married to the Jewish and Christian ladies? Are you suggesting that the Almighty is saying that make them your wives, but don't be friendly with them? Your father-in-law is your enemy, and most certainly your brother-in-law. Of course, this is not possible. I can tell you, if you look at, for instance, Surah Al-Ma'idah, where the Almighty says, "La tattakhizul yahud wan nasara awliya, ba'duhum awliya'u min ba'd." Don't make the Jews and the Christians your friends. There is an alif lam, the, which is preceding Yahud and Nasara. In Arabic, the is either meant for all or is meant for these particular. The particular, it's a proper noun which means a certain group. 4 or 5 verses later, the Quran is clarifying that these are the people who make fun of your relative. So how can you be friends with them? That is exactly what I said. And this is exactly what you will also find clarified in Surah Mumtahina. Unfortunately, what happens is that we are in a habit of reading the Quran, isolating its verses from each other. You know, we follow the policy of atomism. We just read one verse, and this is true in the case of hadith as well. We take a statement of the Prophet, may Allah's mercy be on him, an action of him, a verse of the Quran, not bother as to what the Quran is saying in its entirety. We don't bother what the Prophet ﷺ has been saying throughout his lifetime, and just take an isolated statement and try to generalize it. That is where the problem arises. Otherwise, the Quran is absolutely clear. I mean, why would I ever invite a non-Muslim to have faith if I hate him?
Of course.
If that person is so evil and filthy that I'm not supposed to have any compassion for him. Why?
Sure, also there is in Hadith and Quran there is quotations to say that we should be helping non-Muslims when if they're not your enemy.
Yeah, but why should we help if they are enemies?
No.
That's right. I'm supporting what you're saying.
And like I said in Hadith that there was an occasion when Prophet Muhammad Sahaba came and said, "My mother is a mushrik. Shall I help her?" And he said, "Of course, she's your mother, so you got to help her. You got to give the khidmah."
Sorry,
So
we've
that
just got 2 more questions. Please be precise with your questions. The brother in blue shirt. I'll come to you. Please. No, sorry. Yeah, please.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. for the very profound talk you have given. It was really helpful. May Allah reward you for that. One impression I have, or you say one concern I have, is that one of the biggest challenge the intellectual and philosophical challenge which we face here in West as Muslim is the challenge of atheism in the disguise of rationality and science. And the more affected area of the people or the age group of the people is our youth. Unfortunately, our parents are unaware of their questions. And even the traditional ulama ikram, the Maulanas, they are unaware of their questions as well. Like they have the questions of like theory of evolution. They talk about Karl Marx, Charles Darwin, their role models are Richard Dawkins. They talk about quantum physics and so on. And the philosophies they have in their head over here is given to them by their schools, by their colleges, and supported by the media and all those profound documentary channels. So those children are getting the dawah of atheism from everywhere. And they don't have the supporting side of Islam towards them, if you know what I mean. So what your advice will be for the parents, how to address this issue over here and how to communicate with their children?
And just a follow-up, how do you respond to their argument that it's just, religion is just wishful thinking, so if you just deal with the person.
How do we respond to the challenge of atheism? And how do we respond to the challenge of the people who state that religion is based on wishful thinking? We say to both that you are wrong and we are right. Well, that's where we will start from. But I ask you this question. Do you believe, because you were given your faith by your parents, and you said that I should be loyal to the faith of my parents, and therefore I should continue to remain a good Muslim and follow the right path. If that is what caused you to be a Muslim, then of course your path is very simple. You tell others that, look here, I'm not going to listen to you. Keep your ideas to yourself. I'll follow my path, and you try your luck with somebody else. I would not blame you if you do that, but I'll request you only one thing. Please don't blame anybody else, because a Christian is a Christian because he was born a Christian. A Hindu is a Hindu because he was born Hindu, and a Jew is a Jew because he was born Jew. They're all trying to be loyal to the faiths of their respective traditions, and likewise we are doing it. And in that case, of course, you face the challenge of atheism. Your next generation is faced with it. I don't know how to deal with it. Just tell your children, try your luck with them and tell them that, look here, don't listen to them. Shut your eyes, shut your minds, and they will not. We've got only one choice. We become true Muslims, understanding our faith, reflecting upon the book of the Almighty, understanding the arguments, and as a consequence getting convinced about it. It's not an easy process. God mentions before good deeds, faith. And you know what we think? Faith is something that we have acquired by birth. What a naive understanding. That God Almighty has decided that the beautiful eternal world of paradise is going to be given to the people who will have faith and who will do good deeds. As far as faith is concerned, well, we already had it when we were born. And good deeds, okay, it's a challenge. I tell you, preserving your faith is a greater challenge. It is something that requires you to think, reflect, ponder, critically examine every day if you have a mind that is willing and prepared to think. So as far as these challenges are concerned, well, I will listen to what these atheists are saying. I will talk to my children and tell them that, look here, this is what my God is telling us. This is what the Quran says. What is it that is confusing you? What are their arguments? Let's consider their arguments. Do they make sense? or does the Quran make sense? And of course, we are not talking about atheism and its arguments and how to counter them. I'm just telling the strategy. There is no way out but to confront the challenge of atheism or people who say that it's your wishful thinking. Well, we'll tell them that, look here, I don't know what wishful thinking is all about. I have read the Quran. I have considered the opinions of people who are against Islam, who are against faith. But what should I do? I am convinced that what the book is saying is right. Because I've thought of it. I've considered the other options. If that is what you are genuinely stating, you will have no problems. Well, let me rephrase my statement. You will have problems. You will have challenges. But those challenges are going to be there to strengthen your faith gradually. You will probably spend some sleepless nights. You will probably remain nervous for a while. But that is what the challenge of faith is all about. How on earth can you live where your faith is being challenged? People are saying there is no God. We came about through a process which was happening on its own. And you say, well, I'm not bothered. I'm comfortable with my understanding. Well, honest to God, what you will do is that you will worry about it, you will understand what they're saying, and you will understand what we are believing in and what are our underlying arguments. And I tell you just one thing. When you will start reading the Quran and reflecting upon its verses with that kind of a concern, my goodness, you will find that the Quran is far more deeper than you had ever imagined. We've not even tested the Quran. We've not tried it. We just read it in our prayers, or we just read it for sawab, for getting rewarded. And in most cases, we read it for the reward of the people who died, the deceased relatives. The Quran is not meant to be a book of guidance for it to guide us intellectually, spiritually, and morally. Allow me to say that, and don't blame me if I make that statement. The onslaught of atheism is a good thing. It is challenging our faith. It is inshallah going to strengthen our faith. Well, the faith of those who will bother to take their faith seriously and to understand what the atheists are saying and understand what the Quran is saying. I'm absolutely confident that inshallah we will emerge stronger in our beliefs. But if we have decided that we have faith because our elders had faith, so we have just inherited it from them, well then don't ask this question. Be comfortable with your faith, enjoy it, but please take my word, don't blame Hindus and Christians and Jews for what they are doing. Because those poor people are doing the same thing what you are doing. They have also taken as their religion what their forefathers gave them, and likewise you are doing it. If you really have taken it as a serious understanding which is convincing you, then inshallah it's not a problem. In fact, it's a challenge which should excite you, which should prompt you to think and reflect and study and research more. And inshallah, at the end of the day, you will find that God is speaking the truth. And you will say it from a higher level of confidence, inshallah.
Sorry, the lady in the grey suit, please.
Me?
Yes, please go.
Okay, sorry. Assalamu alaikum, all of you. I have 2 points, one to confirm, both from your lecture. One to confirm and another to clarify. I will make them both very short and